Hello mech fans and welcome to the Valhalla Club. Grab a Fusionaire and join us as we talk BattleTech and the latest happenings around the Colorado BattleTech community.
Hello, and welcome to the Valhalla Club podcast. I am Matt, newly named the Northman. We've also got online David Cerberus.
Hello.
Mike the Viking. Alex, we're going to go with BourBen first because he's got the liquid smooth tones that helped out on Throwdown, Thursday Night Throwdown this week. And then Alex, also known as Porkins. So Alex is our guest this week, and we're just going to kind of have Alex introduce himself, talk a little bit about how he got into BattleTech and his favorite mech, his least favorite unit, and whatever Alex wants to talk about to get you guys to know him. So go ahead, Alex.
Howdy, guys. First off, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate you letting me sharing this with you. So my first exposure to BattleTech was through PC games, as I think a lot of kind of the mid-millennial generation sort of got into it. So ended up like a Dell computer in like 2000, convinced my dad to buy a game pack that had MechWarrior 3, and at the time had no idea BattleTech was an entire thing. Just all I knew was, oh, MechWarrior, this looks cool. Shoot robots and stuff. Played multiplayer with friends down the street, stuff like that. MechWarrior 4, then MechWarrior Online, kind of progressed through all that after a little bit of hiatus. Even got my wife into MechWarrior Online, and then finally discovered the Game of Armored Combat box set in January of 2019. And back then I was still using terminology like board game instead of war game, like totally oblivious to the whole wargaming thing, even as recent as 3 years ago. But got into painting the models and stuff, kind of went down the rabbit hole further and further, and joined the Colorado BattleTech Facebook group. I think at the time it had about 140 members. This is back in like June of 2019. Now over double in size, I know. Linked up with the local group of players like Damien, John, Hal, Jonathan, Seth, Rob. A lot of those guys have kind of moved away or done other stuff. And of course, David was a part of that group too. So learned a little about Alpha Strike 2, 3D printing, mixed terrain. Now I have way more stuff in my basement BattleTech than I should. So that's kind of how I got started into it all.
Nice. And what suits your fancy, Alex? What do you like? What do you dislike?
That's a really tough question. I don't want to be too cliche, but I don't really, I guess, like too much or dislike many of the factions. I have, 6 main paint schemes, and all of them are pretty generic, like no faction markings at all. So I try to be like the kind of, I guess, ideal op for any opponent if they want to beat on their, their most favorite bad guys. I have something that looks at least close enough to what they'd want to kill. In terms of mechs, though, there are a few I do kind of like. I've always been really partial to the Summoner Prime. I think ever since that MechWarrior 3 intro video where like a Timberwolf and a Timberwolf/Mad Cat and a Summoner/Thor go running through the city. I think ever since that I've always been really like that mech. And also the Orion K, it's like the little baby Atlas thing. Seems really nice. I like having 4/6 movement, so yeah. I think that's kind of my summary of my likes and whatnot.
Nice, those are good ones. Yeah, I remember that intro. I really like the intro to that Meckery game. It was a good one.
That poor Firefly pilot.
Exactly. Yeah.
F.
So what's everyone working on? Let's go around the horn and talk about what we've been doing lately. I know David's been hard at work printing out stuff and getting stuff ready for an event coming up. So why don't we start with David?
So yeah, I've been printing like a madman. Both my printers are going pretty much 24/7 as I have filament. I am printing out a lot of the table terrain for the November event. And I also managed to actually find time to, I would say, at least prime 16 minis, and I finished 2 of them. And the others are just sitting in my spray booth, just waiting to get the details put on them. They got the cockpits painted, but that's about it. But yeah, other than that, I'm just cranking out stuff for the upcoming event.
Nice. I mean, primed, you're halfway done. So yeah, it's all good.
Especially with my paint schemes, which are primer and details. So yeah.
Let's see, Ben. I know you threw up a picture today that had a lot of little guys. What have you been working on?
Yeah, so I got I got all of my battle armor based. I'm waiting on a few bases to dry still. About 3/4 of them are prime, so that's an entire battalion of battle armor and an entire trinary of elementals. So that's up and running. And then got some vehicles and some VTOLs and a couple of mechs that I put together that are primed and recovering from their catastrophe this morning. So
Now, why so many elementals and battle armor? You just going gung ho? This is what you're going to run at LVO? Is only infantry?
Yeah, I'm running everything battle armor. No, I wish I could. That'd be fantastic. But no, a lot of it is just stuff that I bought years ago and I haven't put together. And I was like, well, I got time to do it. Let's make it happen. So figured it was time to get off the dime and do it.
Nice, Mike. How about yourself?
I've done nothing over the past month. Hobby related. Work's been pretty busy, and then the wife works night shift, so just trying to keep up with the house. That's been my main focus. So no actual hobby progress whatsoever from me.
You've gotten to play
You
a couple
got to play
games
your first classic
so-
game, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I played the first Hexless classic game that I ever did, but I meant from like a painting perspective. But yeah, no, me and Dave played Hexless Classic yesterday. We played the first two missions, play testing that for the upcoming November event, and that was an absolute blast.
Sounds like you're a fan.
Yeah, I think it's a good marriage of the two systems. Of course, there's still some quirks that I think the original miniature rules is what they call it for Hexless Classic. We threw in some house adjustments that I think streamlined it a little bit, but it was a lot of fun, and like I said, I think the perfect marriage of the two systems.
And you didn't get destroyed by an Ares or anything, right? So
There was no Ares on the table, but I did cause 3 ammo explosions, so suck on that.
It was unfortunate. That was like 4,000 BV worth of my total list that exploded.
Yes, the ammo explosions in anything related to Classic are fantastic and horrible. I agree.
But yeah, that's what I've done.
Nice. And Alex, I forgot to mention that Alex is down in the Springs, Colorado Springs. Alex, have you gotten any printing, painting games in lately?
Yeah, in terms of the hobby progress, still working on my AS350 Army for the Las Vegas Open coming up in January. I'm making a 12th Ghost Regiment scheme, which is one of the Draconis Combine sort of Yakuza-ish factions or units within the faction. It's kind of a dusky color scheme with like star fields across with 12 moons on a various moon cycle, but almost done. But I keep buying more stuff to tweak the army, so maybe it'll never be done. I'll end up with like 3 AS350 armies in the same scheme by the time I'm done. And also working on some AS350 style terrain for the Battle for Black Earth event, which I'm sure you'll plug later on in the podcast.
For sure. Yeah, and those pictures of what you're painting, Alex, look great. So good job, man.
What you've been doing, Matt?
Yeah, I guess I should talk about what have I been doing. Well, I put together a new campaign that we should be running down in, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But that's been a little bit of work to put that together. It's a little bit different format from the ones I've done previously, so it's a little bit of work. I have primed a whole bunch of minis before it gets too cold here. So I think I primed like 30 or 35 minis this week, but as far as painting, was able to play a fun game of trying out kind of the Death from Above Destiny system with the guys up here in Fort Collins this Wednesday. That went pretty fun, except for the fact that my dice, like, somehow Ben dropped off some dice in my dice rack, and I was rolling those all night long, and Josh M up here just completely blew me off the map. But other than that, it was pretty fun to play Destiny. So I've gotten some games in, yeah, but as far as painting, not so much. I need to do that here soon because I need to actually think about the events coming up. But thus is life.
That's how the dice curse works, man.
Yeah, I don't know if my dice are like cursed like yours, I'm gonna have to do something, visit some sort of Indian gravesite or something. I don't know what, but
Bucket of KFC chicken and some rum, man.
Drop them in Ben's
uh,
drink.
yeah, something like that. It sounds like it. We'll hear more about that later. The wonder. So we do have a bit of news for the podcast, and I'm gonna turn it over to Dave to talk about that a little bit. Here you go, Dave.
So we came into a official sponsorship with Aries Games and Miniatures, and through talking with Derek, I've had really good dealings with him over the past couple of years. He's a great dude. He sent me and some of my soldiers some free minis when we ordered some BattleTech stuff from him while we were in Kosovo, and I reached out to him and we started discussions on the podcast becoming sponsored, and he agreed to it. We came to some very amicable terms, and we are now officially sponsored by Aries Games and Miniatures. As a result of this sponsorship, he has agreed to send the Colorado BattleTech guys some free force packs for the upcoming event. So a big thank you goes out to Derek over at Aries Games and Miniatures.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, and just speaking for myself, I've only ever had good interactions with Aries. I mean, anything that I've ordered, I have it within a week, and it's always been really great, especially for when I'm helping to plan events and I need something kind of at the last minute. And I know other places I might not be able to find it, or I might not be able to get it quickly. So it's always been great to count on Aries. And just invite any of the listeners, if you haven't checked out Aries, you should go check them out. They've got a lot of BattleTech stuff and a lot of just general hobby stuff. But yeah, sponsored by Aries Games and Minis. Thanks a lot. And now we're going to head over to a little bit of a lore section with Ben to talk a little bit about why we're called the Valhalla Club Podcast, because we never actually explained that yet. So take it away, Ben.
Anybody that's an old guy like me that knows a lot about the Fourth Succession War and the rise of BattleTech and the many stories behind it. On Solaris 7, there's a bar called Thor's Shield Hall, and it is where a lot of the Solaris crowd hangs out, watching the games and taking part in the mech battles and the arena battles that go on Solaris 7. And within Thor's Shield Hall is an exclusive VIP section called the Valhalla Club, and it's usually reserved for the top 15% of the mech warriors on Solaris 7. So that's kind of the idea, I think, or the intent behind the name when we started going down this road of the podcast. That's kind of, we had somebody comment a while back saying, what the hell is the Valhalla Club? It has nothing to do with BattleTech. Well, it kind of does. So I would encourage you to read a book if you want to know something. That's all I got.
I think specifically you can read the Warrior trilogy. I believe that the first time it was mentioned was probably in Warrior On Guard by Michael Stackpole, probably. I don't know if anyone has any other references to Valhalla Club, but it's definitely referencing that series.
There is also a Civil War novel. I'm going to have to look up the reference, where it is a Solaris-specific story about two warriors, and part of the book takes place in the Valhalla Club.
Yeah, the Civil War one is the one that kicks off the Civil War, really. It's a mini Civil War that's fought before the actual FedCom Civil War. I think it's the second book of the Warrior trilogy, or the first book, where it gives a really good detail of what it looks like inside. It's it's all Vikinged out and Norse mythology type stuff with torches and long wooden tables and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a cool place to hang out if you're part of that top 15%. So if you want to,
It's also I'm sorry. It's also, you'll hear it mentioned by good old Duncan Fisher in Mech Warrior 4 Mercenaries when you're doing the Solaris battles. He'll talk about how he was in the Valhalla Club the other day, talking to one of the other warriors and whatnot.
So that is that's the story behind it.
Yeah, because we're obviously the cream of the crop. I mean, Just top notch warriors.
Top
here.
notch. Yep.
Best of the best.
Top notch.
That's
Top flight
something.
security.
Yeah, something like that. Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we just want to share why we kind of picked that as. I mean, I'm sure Mike the Viking had nothing to do with this, but we all agreed on
No.
it and like it. So
It did sound way better for a podcast title than Just Send It.
oh, shade.
So the book that we're referencing from the Civil War is Illusions of Victory, written by Lauren Coleman.
That's it. That's a good book.
Great book.
It is a really good book. If you're looking for a Solaris themed book, besides the Warrior trilogy, this one is actually very good.
Without spoilers, I believe almost the entirety, if not the entire book, takes place on Solaris 7.
It does.
Yes, it does.
Which is a fantastic place.
Though I don't know if we can really say spoilers for a book that was written 22 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, not so much.
Worth the read. It's worth the read. Take the time, go out and read it. It's a very, very good book.
For sure.
Sorry, not sorry. It ends badly.
This actually connects to a question that Alex asked all of us, so I'll ask it to him. What era of lore do you like to read?
Like most people, I have a lot to catch up on. I think I started reading lore in about 2016 before I even got into tabletop, and I've worked through a lot of the classic stuff, the 80s stuff, the early 90s stuff. So I haven't gotten too much beyond the early Civil War, but I think I find this is probably a little cliche, but I do find the clan invasion to be some of the most interesting to play in the whole, oh man, like the clans are here. We don't know what they're called the clans yet. They're just some crazy forces, and all the confusion the Inner Sphere had during that time I find really intriguing.
Agreed. I really like the clan invasion for the lore as far as the lore side goes. But we had quite a diversity of opinions here. What else did you guys like? The other guys.
I like Civil War personally. Anything the Fourth Succession War to the Civil War is kind of where I enjoy reading. I haven't read a whole lot of the Dark Age or anything in the Elk Clan era yet.
Mike?
Mike, go.
I'm reading wise, I love just reading all of it. I'm kind of all over the place. I'm currently reading an Ill Clan era. I alternate pretty much books where I'll read a current Ill Clan era and then I'll read something back in the Succession Wars, and I just keep bouncing back and forth, which also has me like I'll be 3 pages deep into a chapter, and I'm constantly flipping back to the beginning of the chapter just to see what the date was.
I was about to say that would be confusing for me. I'd be like, well, of course Hans was like on Terra, he was,
Yeah. But no, reading wise, I love reading all of it. It's all great fun to read. It's actually I've never been a reader growing up. I've always kind of hated it. Ever since I first got into it back in the Clicks days, the Dark Age books though. This was the only type of book or anything that I could actually be focused on and actually like held my attention. And therefore it is still the only universe anything that I read, period. As for playing, I like around that Civil War era where everyone Inner Sphere has a lot more of the clan tech and it's a lot more even tech wise, but we also got a lot of the cool weapons, ATMs and all the other good stuff.
Dirty Clanner.
Crazy, but not too crazy. Yeah. How about you, Ben?
You guys all know I'm old, and what got me into BattleTech was reading the first novel that I read was Thunder Rift, back when it was like first came out, and going through, I was addicted to the novels all the way through Endgame pretty much, and then with the whole click text thing and the jihad happening, and I stepped away from the game for a few years, and then coming back into it, getting caught back up into the Oak Clan area. I've missed a whole gap of Dark Age novels that I'm slowly going back through and reading, and I'm not really impressed by them. That's as far as I'm going to say on that.
You don't like industrial mechs like as the only thing on the field? Yeah.
That
You
is
know,
blasphemy.
it's not the industrial Nimax. I think those are cool, but it's just I think that there's definitely a difference in the writing, in like the how it's portrayed and stuff like that. With some of the Dark Age novels, I think I'm like maybe 6 or 7 in so far. And I'm a chronological reader, so like I started all the way back at the first chronological book I could find, and started reading back up. So it just a lot of those Dark Age novels just don't really hold my attention. It takes me a lot to kind of gut through them a little bit. But yeah, I think from a play style wise, I mean, I grew up as a classic player, and so I really enjoyed playing classic in the Fourth Succession War and the Succession War eras. As an Alpha Strike player, I prefer the Civil War era, just because of you get a little bit more stuff. I'm not real comfortable with the Dark Age and the Ill Clan stuff. I mean, there's so much stuff that has come out in that period of the Dark Age and Ill Clan that, like, I don't even know what some of the battle armor are. I don't know what mechs are, out there. So I tend to stick with what I know on the Alpha Strike side. So Civil War era is where I'm at.
Cool. Yeah. It's definitely different in the Dark Age lore. The books that I've read, I agree, are kind of different. I don't know, just the feel of them is different from all the Succession War stuff and the clan invasion. So yeah, it's definitely different.
What about you, Matt?
I mean, I enjoy the clan invasion lore. As far as play, I'm pretty flexible, but it's that break between. It feels like there's definitely a break between Civil War and Jihad. So anything Civil War and before, I love to play. It doesn't, especially in Alpha Strike, the tech isn't too crazy or anything, and even in Classic, it's really not too bad. But kind of after Jihad and after, I guess if I had more time to really delve and really get deeper into the tech and stuff, it might be more enjoyable. But I guess that's just something I need to work on in the future. But until then, it's Civil War and anything before to play. So yeah, I like that. It's all good. So yeah, so the kind of the main meat of this episode today is we're going to talk about campaigns. So I think our real goal in talking about campaigns is to kind of let you know that you can create one or you can play one, and why you might want to do so, and kind of just point out some resources that we've found or that are provided in order to do so. And I'll just kind of speak from some personal experience real quick, but I think for me, campaigns kind of they kind of itch my little I want to be somewhat of an accountant itch. I want to deal a little bit more with some numbers, but I also want my units to like stay, so I get to know them better. I'm more attached to a particular pilot or mech or whatever it may be, a vehicle squad, because they have a name or I've upgraded them over time. Also, you can get, scenarios that actually mean something rather than just like one-off, go and destroy the other guys, or go play King of the Hill for no reason than it's King of the Hill, where there's more of an objective. And I think a lot of people have asked about, how to do scenarios and if we know how to do them. Anyway, so I think Ben's going to start us off on kind of like a little bit of a summary on like campaigns and how to start, kind of where to start in developing campaigns and playing them. So I'll turn it back over to Ben for a little bit.
All right. Yeah, so let's talk about the differences between a scenario and a campaign. When you're looking at something to do with your group or something like that, it depends on what your group makeup is and what you want to get out of it. But ideally, you should be able to run a scenario in one game session or over a weekend or, whatever. But the campaign is usually a set of linked scenarios that all kind of feed off of each other. And I think a lot of folks, when they start looking at campaigns and stuff like that, they get a little intimidated or overwhelmed. And there's a lot of resources out there for you to really just make what you want or build what you want, or hell, use a pre-built one. You know, it really just depends on your group and what you want to get out of it. You know, Matt, you can talk about the campaigns you put together.
Yeah, and that kind of relates into kind of the types of campaigns in general. You know, you can have it be player versus player, or kind of a player versus GM, and the ones that I've put together recently, and I'll say, like up to like maybe 3 months ago, I had never played in a campaign, nor had I ever GM'd a campaign at all. So it's something that anyone can do. If I can do it, then anyone really can do it. But I've put together a couple of campaigns that I have GM'd, or I'm about to start another one with as a GM, as well as some other ones where it's player versus player, and I just organize it and then other people play it. And I think it's really interesting to see differences in the scenarios that I set up in each of these, but also kind of the resources that I use that we'll kind of go through talking wise. But it's been really fun. I really enjoy kind of the aspect of like you get to stick with your units. I always loved, like back as a kid playing Nintendo, like the games where you got to keep the guys from mission to mission and you got to upgrade them, and they got better or they had special skills or things like that. So that's what I really attracted me to playing campaigns versus just one-off scenarios. I know the other guys have played some as well. Alex, what kind of? I know you've been running some longer campaigns down there in the Springs with some people. What kind of drew you into doing that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head on a lot of it. The biggest thing is like one, how immersed do you want to get in the lore? You can tell a bigger tale, your own narrative within the larger BattleTech narrative, or even something totally different. If you want to go off to a planet with like bird-like creatures or something. Uh, but you can do all that kind of stuff, and also, like you said, whatever your pilots and your mechs matter from mission to mission, it really adds to it a lot. Yeah. So yeah, I kind of break it down to three categories. You mentioned a couple there. One is GM led with multiple player characters. So this is where one GM is kind of running it for a lot of different people. And then kind of the modification of that, or a second one I think of as like a GM led with like a single like player. So it's kind of just one GM kind of like running it for one person. That's what I've been doing a couple of times recently down here. I think that what you're referencing earlier about my activities. And then also there's player versus player, which could either be, multiple players versus multiple players, or one-on-one. And they all have a lot of pros and cons. I don't know if I wrote down some what I thought were pros and cons of each one of those systems, but that's going to be a lot of me talking, so I can save it for later or jump into it.
Yeah, we can kind of sum things up as we get towards the end of this to wrap it up. But I mean, it's I think it's a really fun thing, and I think the people that I've played with have enjoyed it a lot. I mean, maybe it's not for everyone, but I've found a lot of people that really like it. And
Yeah, definitely true, because it's the community's grown so much, right? And you oftentimes can't please everyone. Some people want a more casual or a really immersive narrative experience. Others may want a really competitive experience. And I think there's lots of tools in the toolbox to fulfill either of those, depending upon what you're doing, and even mixing them up a little too.
yeah, exactly. Like almost all of the resources that Catalyst and any publishers of BattleTech have put out, they always kind of have this thing in the front. They say, pick and choose. This isn't like you have to do all of this, especially like a big manual like Campaign Ops. It directly states that just pick and choose what you want to add to your game. Make it a campaign, but make it your campaign. Don't make it like our campaign. So I yeah, completely agree. It's kind of a fun thing to kind of modify how you play. The first thing is like where to start when you think about creating a campaign. So I'll just talk to how I did recently. I produced I did a kind of a GM versus players campaign, and I kind of set it up in the year 3049, and the players were a mercenary group, and they had their units and everything, and then they were fighting this mysterious, this kind of like mercenary force that seemed to be supported by the Outworld Alliance, and then as they went through the different scenarios, they learned more information that they were actually being supported by the Draconis Combine, and then in the last mission which happened to be the first month of 3050. Yes, no foreshadowing whatsoever. But as they're kind of chasing this pirate force to their dropship is the last mission. All of a sudden, these mysterious invaders can come out, and yes, it was the clans and everything, you know. So I took inspiration from lore, from I forget which the trilogy of books that's the first clan invasion series, and that was fun because it had these all these little surprises in each of the missions that built up to this big surprise at the end. And so that was really fun for me as a GM, and the players really liked it. But also the scenarios were just I worked on different scenarios to kind of have a diversity of things. So I started with the lore and then used different resources to kind of fill in the chinks there. Ben, you want to talk about more kind of some of where to start resources?
So, like Matt said, I mean, lore is great because really, as a GM, you're looking for a hook. You're looking for something to kind of draw the players in a little bit and get them interested in continuing the campaign. Novels are a great place for it. Just taking something that wasn't really expanded on in the novel line, and picking it up and going, let's just run the entire, Hohiro Kurita on Wolcott or whatever, where he was running a guerrilla campaign until Victor Steiner Davian came and picked him up with the 10th Lyrian Guards, something like that you could take and play that type of campaign. But if you're looking for something to, kind of build your own mercenary unit, which, let's be honest, I mean, pretty much everybody wants to do that kind of stuff because they want that stuff to be their own. There's a lot of different source books out there that you can get into, especially a lot of the older source books from the early days of FASA and FanPro, and even now with CGL. You got like your Chaos March source book from back in the day of like 3056, 3057, 3058 time frame. It's got a lot of stuff in there for different mercenary units to kind of get involved in stuff. The Objective Raid source book, which was something from like 3055, I think. It like detailed every single factory and where every weapon was built in the entire inner sphere.
I really like those source books because they have rat tables, which is one of my favorite things. Is like then you get this diversity of forces that maybe you don't usually play with, but you get to play with this for this particular campaign. It's really fun.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of, and there's a fan built Objective Raids 3067, I think, which kind of updates a lot of the stuff from the original Objective Raid. So, but also just short stories, like the Shrapnel short stories are out there. Just taking something from there and just kind of expanding on it will help you flesh out your campaign. Sarna is a great resource. Obviously everybody here has used Sarna pretty much at one point or another. Just to look for different stuff to give you ideas about different things. You've got I don't know if you want me to get into the pre-building stuff or the pre-built stuff.
Basically what, from what I've seen, like all the kind of the rules side or kind of the general stuff is stacked into the sort or the whatever you call campaign ops, right? So that's kind of this is everything, but then the actual campaigns a lot of these are pre-built, so they're like you don't really even have to go into the lore. You can just kind of pick up this pre-built thing. So Ben has a lot of examples of these. So go for it, Ben.
Yeah, you might even be a subject matter expert on, I don't know, maybe Turning Point's helm.
Perhaps, just perhaps
something. So a lot of your pre-built stuff, even some of the old school stuff like the FASA scenario packs with like the Grey Death Legion and the Kellhounds and the Wolf Dragoons. I mean, a lot of that stuff took place in like the Fourth Succession War. So there's some good stuff in there, even just to give you ideas about where to take your campaign from. A lot of, Matt's mentioned campaign ops a few times. I would say also look at the Chaos campaign rules, which is, I believe, it's just a free download from what I recall.
it's a free download, and then so they even have scenarios in that one. Whereas in Campaign Ops, they have the Chaos campaign kind of rules, but they don't have the scenarios. So yeah, it's kind of you could do combo as well.
So the
Yeah,
free
and I
one
think
is the Chaos Campaign Succession Wars. There are later iterations of the Chaos campaigns, but you do have to pay for those from Catalyst.
right. Yeah, I knew there was the original Chaos campaign, and then they came out with the Chaos campaign Succession Wars, and they all have little scenarios and kind of linking campaigns or linking touch points in them. And then there's a lot of people don't realize it, but there's the turning points line. And if you ever really dive into the turning points line like I have, you'll see there's 34 different pre-built campaigns already ready for you to go, and it spans from the Succession Wars all the way up to the Oakland era now. And a lot of it is, and you'll see different names for them too, because they started off with jihad turning points, and that was really the only information we were getting about the jihad was from the turning points before even any of the source books came out. We just knew these turning points were coming out, and holy crap, the Blakis are attacking, Hesperus too, or the Blakis are going after, Luthien or something like that. So they started off with the jihad turning points. There's also historical turning points, which usually involve something from the third, fourth Succession War, even later down in the Star League era, which involve usually one planet, one battle on one planet. There's a operational turning points, which usually involves multiple worlds. So it's usually a military operation that happens to take multiple worlds. So you have the jihad turning points, the historical turning points, and the operational turning points. And I think at some point CGL decided, you know what, that's just too many things that are confusing people. And I think starting about 15 or 16 back, they just said, you know what, everything's a turning point at this point. We're not going to kind of class them within their eras or class them within anything. So now, starting with turning points Irian, I think it was, you have just straight turning points, and they're, like I said, they're pre-built scenarios that are pre-built campaigns for you that you can play your favorite mercenary unit or your favorite house unit or your favorite clan unit or something like that. So definitely something to look into as a resource. I know, Matt, you just used my turning point that I wrote for the campaign in a day.
Yeah, it was really cool because since it was already pre-built, all I did, and we used it. So basically, all these, as far as I understand, all the turning points and most of this stuff is kind of developed for classic BattleTech play. But I just basically took this turning points and kind of transformed everything into Alpha Strike, which really wasn't that hard. It was just kind of changing everything from BV to PV and kind of making it so at least felt even on each side. But then I took it, and there are basically 6 missions in that turning points, and took 4 of those that I thought were really representative of the whole campaign and put those into a campaign in a day. So with Alpha Strike, we were able to run those missions faster, but still kind of get the feel for them, kind of get the feel for the lore behind it, because it's based on the Grey Death. What's the name of the corps? I forget.
The Grey Death Legion?
Yeah, no, not the Grey Death Legion. The corps they find.
The Helm Memory.
Yeah, Helm Memory Core.
Helm Memory Core. Thank you. Since it's called, yes, Helm. So yeah, it's based around what they're fighting, and they find this core and everything. But doing this campaign in a day, these 4 missions in just one day, they started from basically just their first encounter with the 2 forces all the way up to the final mission. And I really liked it. It really got you into the lore and let you, you've read about this, but now you get to actually experience it. So it was really cool. It was kind of a combination of resources. So if you really wanted to, you could read the lore books, the fiction behind it, but also you can just grab this turning points packet, run the missions straight off. You don't have to do anything. It's just 2 forces, and you pick your units and go at it. And so it's all set up, and it's really fun. So I really enjoyed it.
If we have a brand new player that's just picked up Alpha Strike Commander Edition or Total Warfare, or just the intro box set, where would you guys recommend they start if they want to do a narrative campaign or a narrative just sit down, play with their friends? They want to do more than just set up a map sheet and play. Where should they start? Should they start with a chaos campaign? Should they start with the Total Warfare, or should they go into something more like the Turning Points, like what Ben suggested? Where do you guys think they should start?
Honestly, I would say Turning Points, just because it makes it's all laid out for you. I mean, it references things from the actual manuals, from Total Warfare, from BattleTech manual. Oh, the rules are there, but the actual campaign is all set up for you. It even gives you like the maps you to use. So it's pretty well. What do you think, Ben or Alex or Mike?
I mean, I go for it, Alex.
Yeah, so my opinion is none of the above, actually. So all that stuff is really good. But I think if someone just picked up a Game of Armored Combat box and they've got a few, skirmish games under the belt, pickup games, local game shop, without spending, well, some of the things you references are free too. Without spending a dime, they could check out the Death from Above wargaming system. So for those who don't know, there's a somewhat popular, very pretty big in the community YouTube channel called Death from Above Wargaming that they've been making videos since about 2018, I think, and they have a campaign system that is basically Chaos Campaign Light. It's about less than 20 pages long, and it's very clear, easy to read, easy to follow, pretty simple. Both AS Alpha Strike and Classic are for free on their site to download. I've done these quite a bit with some like player versus player campaign. Once back in 2019 with a friend John who moved away from the area, and recently with Damien as well. And it's not really great for lore wise, but if you want to link games together, you could do that. And if you watch the YouTube videos that they do on Death from Above, you see they kind of build some lore into the stuff as well. GMing can be, a lot of work. I'm sure, Matt, you can attest to this. Any guys that GM'd can attest GMing can be quite a bit of work. And it's a way to keep the energy going if someone's a new player to just dive into that. So that's my dark horse offering there is I'd say DFA. Direct them there, let them watch free videos. It'll build up some energy. Pretty easy to figure out and get going.
I like it, Alex. Thanks for bringing it up. I didn't really think about that, but yeah, I have looked through their packet, their campaign pack, and I did like it because it is like you don't have to dive deep into the lore. It is a little bit lore light, but it still is like based in the universe and kind of gives you more than just a one-off scenario. So I like that. Mike, any thoughts?
I have not put on campaign or anything of the sorts. So I am learning all of this from all of you.
So of the various things that we've discussed tonight, what sounds easier, or what would you go for?
It would probably be some time before I try to develop a campaign, but I've play tested yesterday Dave's scenario setup for the upcoming November event, and it was a lot of fun. I appreciate the strategic aspect of damage carrying over and trying to spend support points, SP points on that.
Which I'll freely admit, I stole most of that idea from Chaos Campaign Succession Wars.
No, but it was good. It actually it adds such a different level, like much deeper strategic element to it. Like, okay, do I spend the points on trying to repair structure or just armor? But no, that was my first time trying to do any type of scenario type thing, and it was a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to future ones being hosted by all of you fine fellows.
Well, Dave, if you want to talk about how you kind of, where you got your inspiration from and how you're developing this thing for this event coming up.
So my process for developing the November event that's coming up was obviously we talked very, very little about it last month. Uh, the community wanted to have a narrative event. So obviously we're working under the constraint of being able to do it inside of a single day because a multi-day event would just probably be too difficult for the community to really get behind at this point. So I looked at the Chaos campaign, and they have a progressive system that they go through for all of their missions, and starts off and the mission tracks, and it starts off with the meeting engagement track, and then you go to either a breakthrough or pursuit, then down into a counterattack, assault track, or defense track. So I limited that to where we could complete a narrative in 3 games. So using the Chaos campaign, I just slimmed it down. Mm, I went through a little bit of the lore. I looked at where could I plug and play a scenario that would be not on the main line of the lore, but on a parallel track. And through that, I started with a little bit of research on Sarna, looking at the map of the Inner Sphere and the clan invasion between the initial push that the clans made uh, and before the beginning of the Civil War. And I kind of looked on the outskirts of, in this case, the Jade Falcon territory and the Lyran Commonwealth. And I found a planet that fit the bill that had a gap in its Sarna history, and then I used that gap as the basis to write the narrative that we're going to be playing on the 19th. From there, it was figuring out okay, how do the forces get to the planet? What's their objective? And then how do they either get pushed off or win? So I used those 3 just for how I made the narrative. The goal was make it to where it was a symmetrical event, because asymmetrical warfare can be a huge pain in the butt, and it tends to lead to players, one side having a great day, the other side getting their butts kicked. So I wanted to make it symmetrical where everybody has the same amount of battle value on each side of the table, and they have a relatively equal chance of winning each scenario to push the story in one direction or another. I guess in summary, I used Chaos Campaign, I used Sarna for the lore, and then I used the Total Warfare Manual to kind of give myself that check on rules and different items that we would encounter during the day, and trying to decide like what is going to be the best play experience for the players that are going to show up. Because I think the most important thing that you have to do if you're planning to run a narrative campaign, a narrative event, is you have to think about the players, and you have to respect the fact that they are committing their time to spend with you, to, you know, spend 8 hours of their day playing through something that you've written, and you don't want to crush them. You don't want to make it so that one side is absolutely going to win or one side is absolutely going to lose. Because if you do that, you're going to have people that are going to leave your campaign. You're going to have people that will not want to go up again. And I've been part of campaigns where that happened, and I was that person who found the scenario just very, very one-sided, and it just became just completely no fun to play.
I think symmetry is definitely like as far as developing campaigns, I think that is the most difficult thing that I found, is just like how to try to have slightly asymmetric things, but then keep it even. It's kind of a very difficult thing to balance. So I appreciate you kind of making it as equal as possible while still moving through 3 different scenarios. So I'm really looking forward to that part of it.
I think in a GM versus players, you can have more asymmetrical warfare because then you're really kind of telling a story. And you as a GM, you're going to have an objective that you're trying to move your players into. But if you have player versus player, I think you have to go with a symmetrical warfare point of view because you want to make sure that you're balancing expectations across both parties.
Yeah, I agree. Because like in a GM versus players, then it's like my purpose was always like let the players have a good time while like making it challenging for them. But still, like I'm not going to throw up, completely asymmetrical where they're going to have way less than the GM would. Because I agree, it wouldn't be fun in the end of the day.
Yeah, jumping on the
Yeah.
the asymmetric bandwagon here. So one thing I've noticed with asymmetric scenarios is if they're provided a lot of times, if you adjust them too much, then whatever balance that the creators intended for that scenario will it's very likely to upset that balance if you modify a scenario too much. Good example of this is the Death from Above wargaming system I mentioned earlier. As there's a lot of pretty elaborate house rules that they did, and especially like their classic stuff is balanced for succession wars. And whenever you adjust those two things too much, a lot of the asymmetric scenarios get really out of whack. Whenever ranges are a lot different, things like that. So yeah, just this is my fair warning. Asymmetric I think can work, so I'll offer a slightly differing opinion from you fine gentlemen on that. But I think you just have to be very careful when you start adjusting it too much.
And I found that with actually with the turning points, quite a few of the missions are asymmetric, but they've definitely gone through quite a bit of thought and I'm assuming quite a bit of playtesting because when I've done asymmetric scenarios as a GM, it hasn't been with that, so it hasn't always ended up like I expected. But yeah, maybe Ben, you want to chime in on kind of thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at like campaign operations where they give you like, I don't know, I can't remember what it is. It's like 5 or 6 different types of scenarios that you can link together. I mean, a lot of them are very, you know, kind of wishy-washy unless you start really getting into the playtesting aspect and adding different things to them that can enhance them in some way, shape, or form. With different special rules just for each scenario kind of thing. Like, for example, in Helm Turning Points, where the very first scenario, the free elite forces start off in the center of the map, and they roll a d6 to start off with to determine if they pick up the invaders coming back at them or not. And it gives it that element of surprise. So just little things like that can add or enhance each scenario to kind of make it a little less stand-up fightish, or a breakthrough scenario that always usually devolves into a stand-up fight. I mean, you look at even some of the Alpha Strike 350 games that happen, those scenarios, 9 times out of 10, well, I won't say 9 times out of 10, maybe like 7 times out of 10 more, they just devolve into just who can outlast the other guy, and not even go after the objectives and stuff like that. So it's little objectives you can add in there that kind of can enhance each one of those things.
Yeah.
Mike and I actually ran into that in the testing that we did yesterday. My original plan was to have 2 buildings at a CF-75 that the attacker was supposed to destroy, but since I was playing the attacker, what I realized was that is a whole lot of armor to get through to achieve the objective, and it just wasn't even feasible for me as the attacker to go after those 2 objectives because the amount of the time it would take me to do that much damage to 2 different buildings while trying to defend against the defense forces just would have not worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you shot at the objective buildings at all for that scenario.
Nope.
It was essentially a stand-up fight.
That's what it
because,
became.
Yeah, that CF value was far too high to be attractive as an objective.
Now, if my dice hadn't screwed me, I would have probably gone after the objectives, but rolling a whole bunch of 1s and 2s against clan mechs didn't turn out very well for my guys. So, it happens.
Yeah. And just to clarify something that's been said, like with the turning points and stuff like that, I mean, they're not strictly for classic. They're in each one of the turning points, it has a breakdown of Alpha Strike rules, where to find them, and classic rules. Really, I think what's geared more towards classic is the chaos campaign system itself. When you start adding in the war chest points and all that kind of stuff, it kind of gets into real crunchy classic type stuff. So just keep that in mind. Going back to that question that where would I start somebody off on? And I'd say just pay the $5 or $6 on the Catalyst website and download the PDF for one of the turning points. That's probably just the easiest way. If you're not creative enough to come up with your own thing, that sounds horrible, but some people just aren't. Some people just are not capable of imagining something unique or new, and that's probably the easiest way to go sometimes. Like Mike.
Well, it also takes a lot of time, and we can't downplay that enough. Creating a good campaign takes time. It requires you to do the research, you're the one that's responsible for making that good, experience for your players. So you have to dedicate the amount of time that you dedicate to creating this scenario is going to be directly attributable to the amount of enjoyment that your players get out of it. So if you are just don't have the time to put into it, I would absolutely suggest going with the turning points or a chaos campaign or something like that, where you can just plug and play it and you can just crack it open. Hey, I'm going to take side A, you take side B, and we go at it and we see what happens.
If you don't like Microsoft Word, just download the PDF like Ben said.
It's easy to do. I mean, Matt, how long did you spend creating scenarios for your last campaign you ran?
Yeah, so we ran up here in Fort Collins, we ran a 5-mission campaign, and for each scenario, and scenario creation is something else I think we'll talk about in the future, but trying to link each of the scenarios and have this kind of narrative woven in between them while also keeping the scenarios like doable. I mean, it was probably like 1 to 2 hours a week. But I was consistently thinking about it throughout the weeks that I was developing these things. I mean, it is something that like it definitely takes time if you want to develop your own. So that's why I really like, this, what Alex said, where does a beginner turn to? Where do we go? Whether it's DFA or these turning points. Another thing that I really like about campaigns in general, but also these pre-built ones, is that you gain experience in optional rules, because in general these pre-builts, or even when you build your own, you're going to include some optional rules that are specific to each scenario, and that just increases the experience level of any player, which I really appreciate. I really like kind of player development as well as game development. So that's one of the things I really enjoy about pre-builts is these optional rules that are added into each scenario.
Yeah, and you really, when you look at, I know from the turning point side, it's one of those things I always try to include at least 2 or 3 optional rules in there that people could play with. And they were different per scenario, just to kind of open up the wider world of like tactical operations or the advanced rules side of things. Speaking of time, probably one of the funnest campaigns I played in was, I had a group of 3 guys in Virginia, and me and 2 others, and we did a rotating GM. So every scenario was 1 GM with a player being the op4, and then your mercenary unit kind of thing, and then would rotate the next weekend to the next set of guys. So it kind of took a little bit of that weight off of the GM to develop the next scenario, like within a week or 2 weeks or whatever. So now my turn as a GM, I got 3 weeks or 4 weeks to kind of plan it out and figure out what I want to do with the next guy. So that's an option for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, just to be honest, there's like so many options out there. It's kind of what you want to do. But I kind of would caution people that are trying to develop their own campaign, especially, don't try to go too hard. Like, don't try to add in too many optional rules, because it just becomes too much. And especially if players are trying to learn things, you're adding in more things every scenario and stuff. So there's just so much out there, but you can kind of pick and choose. It's not necessary for you to just do everything all at once. So, I think also Ben kind of pointed out that he's kind of had a solo campaign going on for a long time using Megamech. You want to talk about that, Ben?
Yeah, I think Mech HQ. So when you download MegaMech, you usually get MegaMech, Mech Lab, and Mech HQ. And there's not a lot of press out there about Mech HQ. Not a lot of. I don't know how many people use it. Not a lot of statistics on it, but I started playing. I've got about 3 campaigns going at any given time with using Mech HQ, and it's pretty solid because you just start off. And it runs off of several different rule sets. You can pick and choose what rule set you want to use, whether you want to use campaign ops, whether you want to use total warfare, whether you want to use there's a couple of self-designed things in there, but you can build out your entire merc unit, organize them however you want to, hire people, fight battles against the bot where they actually give you scenarios in Megamech that you go out and, the chase scenario or the breakthrough or the stand-up fight or, Star League Cash, or there's a lot of different scenarios that the bot will run against you. And then you come back into the Mech HQ piece of it and you're making repairs and you're managing C-bills and you're creating your own mech if you want to. So there's Mech HQ is a pretty cool option. I think one of the guys in WolfNet was using Mech HQ to kind of track the damage and the repairs and stuff like that for when they were playing a campaign in one of the battalions over there. So it's something to look at. I like it just because I can kind of build my own merc unit in it and play against the bot, and I don't have to, listen to, some rules lawyer yelling at me saying I can't have that or I can't have this kind of thing,
It's just antisocial, Ben. Man, come on.
That's it. I just don't like people anyway.
I want to jump on the Mech HQ bit a little bit too.
Go for it.
One of the first things that I had the pleasure of taking part of when I got into the community was Damien was a local player that was hosting a Tiburon Sons Legion, a mercenary company campaign, and Mech HQ was how he was managing all that as well. And he's in a local group for the Colorado folks. If you ever want to reach out to him for questions, maybe. Sorry, Dan, I just signed you up for a bunch of work, maybe. But my understanding was he would basically have Mech HQ generate missions. We'd kind of pick from them or pick what plants we wanted to go to, execute the mission on the tabletop. He'd enter all that damage and so forth into it, like Ben said, and also manage a C-build account, manage the coffers, buy mechs, replacement parts, things like that. It's definitely, I think, down to very granular detail. Again, like Ben said, if you want to do a campaign where you can have a junior tech ruin a mech by failing a repair roll, but then later grow to be like 150 years old and a master technician, all in the same game, that's definitely the place you want to be.
I love that description. Yeah.
I actually played in that Bavarian Sun campaign when he first started it back in 2017, I think. And it was a lot of fun. Damien put together a really, really good campaign.
Yeah,
that
it was a great campaign.
ton of fun.
Definitely.
I would have kept playing with it, but Kosovo
I remember I came in as like a corporal in the campaign or something, and I'm pretty sure you were like lieutenant or captain at the time in the Sons Legion. I had a crappy dragon 1 in, which is not a super fun mech.
No.
So yeah, that was a fun campaign.
Better than the
for sure.
Hunchback I started in.
Oh, I take a Hunchback any day. Got some real firepower at least.
And if I remember correctly, Damien I'm not sure if they just finished or they're still running it, but he was running a campaign on Megamech where each player would come in and just control one unit. it was the whole thing was just done on Megamech. The actual scenario was done on Megamech, and then he would. I'm not sure if he ported the information between Megamech and Mech HQ or whatever, but so you could run an entire multiplayer campaign in Megamech or Mech HQ, whichever. So that's another option as well. A lot of options out
I
there.
believe it was called Chaucer's.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what it was. So I guess we've kind of babbled on about all this stuff, but maybe we'll just kind of summarize. There's a lot of options, but there's a lot of resources, and it can be as complicated or not, as easy as you want it to be. There are pre-builts. There you can take the lore and make your own. There's lots of resources, including campaign ops, the chaos campaign system. There's ways to play, like on Mega Mech or Mech HQ. There's lots of ways to do it, but maybe we'll just kind of summarize why we would play a campaign. What are the benefits? What do you think are good? Maybe we'll start with Alex, our guest.
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm thinking about the community, how it's been growing a lot recently, and there are a lot of people come to BattleTech for a lot of different reasons. But I think one of the things that's been growing the community a lot is the tournament scene. Which, yeah, I'm going off the rails here a little. Just bear with me. I'm coming back to campaigns. Trust me. But tournament scene right now is thriving. Right now, you got groups like Wolf of the Radio podcast with AS350, the BattleTech Champion Circuit. We have competitive local events in our local Colorado area, and all that stuff is all super great and super awesome. But what about the people who don't really like the more competitive side of it, the tournament scene and whatnot, and want to do something more casual narrative? Or what if the meta becomes stable in the tournament scene? BattleTech isn't known for, a lot of really big balance updates to keep stuff fresh. That's one of the strengths of the system, actually, is that it is more stable, in my opinion. But that's the why campaigns, I say. It gives you something that you can do outside the competitive set. You can either, get together some good friends you like playing with, and you can all dive into a narrative together and have a great story to all share and talk about. Or you can just chain a few of those games together and, you find some of your favorite few guys you like playing with a lot and start up a DFA style campaign, just so you have a little more into it than just your average pickup game. So that's why I would say go try some campaign stuff out. Don't set too high a goal for yourself. You can just keep it simple in the beginning and see where it goes from there.
Awesome. Any other thought, Ben? Maybe you want to talk about why you would or would not play campaigns?
Yeah, I mean, campaigns are, to me, is like the meat and potatoes of why I got into BattleTech. It's about the lore. It's about the imagination of you running your own unit kind of thing. That's really what I always enjoyed about BattleTech, is just the campaign scene, really, and play on a regular basis doing stuff instead of just the standard every week we get together and just shoot at each other for no particular draw, other than shooting at each other. So I think campaigns are great, and everybody should try some at least once.
Yeah, I agree. David, Mike, any thoughts?
So, I mean, the basis of the BattleTech game was for narrative play. So, while yes, we do like people like me, I enjoy the competitive scene, but the competitive scene does get old. It can get you burnt out a little bit. Narrative campaigns really get you back to what the core of the game is. So I would say absolutely try out a narrative campaign or just a narrative linking of scenarios. It builds some ownership in the unit and your own personal lore for the things that we're spending money on. So obviously we want to do things with our pile of shame and our pile of miniatures. And when you go into a game where you have a little bit of skin in the battle, it makes it more engaging and more fun than a pickup game, because you have to really care about, is your unit going to survive this encounter? Are they going to be able to fight in the next one? And I think that adds a little bit level of good stress to a player that makes it a lot more fun.
Mike, it sounds like you had some similar comments there as far as like making it matter for units.
Yeah, like so like I mentioned, yesterday was the first time I played in a scenario type based / mini campaign where everything carried over from mission to mission. And the new to me thought process of, oh, because I'm used to just, pickup games where it's just like, well, if it dies, it dies. But now it's like I need to not let this guy die so that I can repair him and use him in the next battle. And as an individual that super appreciates and loves all the novels and lore, it feels like I'm writing my own book in that process from that game, um, which is another another thing I love about it. Um, but yeah, it's a whole new strategic element, and as an individual that has always loved strategic games, I want more of it. It's just the downside to long 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 running campaigns is the time requirement. Uh, Depending on your job, it can be difficult to commit to something like that. But um, no, I definitely want to try more campaigns and participate more.
Yeah, I completely agree with especially those last thoughts there is when it matters if I lose a unit or not. I mean, I need to keep like my lights alive so that if I have in the future, if I have a scouting mission, I can have something that moves more than 6 inches at a time. So it really matters in a strategic sense, in a logistic sense, that I keep things alive, that I am more cautious with them, but I still have to accomplish the scenarios and things like that. So really appreciate campaigns. Some people might say just send it. But yeah, so that's kind of our wrap on campaigns. And now I'm going to take a break.
Well, if we're taking a break, maybe we could include a segment about where to find all these resources. I'm not sure we hit it all on everything.
Yeah.
Did we?
When you're talking about places to find all these resources that we've gone over in today's episode, uh, obviously the first stop is going to be the Catalyst website. You can order your either a PDF version or the actual physical book. Your local game stores should also have some of these books in stock. If not, they can order them for you. Uh, but the books that we've gone over today have been the Alpha Strike Commanders Edition, which is a pretty good all-encompassing rulebook for the Alpha Strike game set. The BattleTech Total Warfare, which has a small section on scenarios in it, and that is going to be your core classic rulebook. You also have the Battle Mech Manual, the Tech Manual, and then you get into more of the crunchy books like campaign operations, strategic operations, if you're looking for a really in-depth experience. Additionally, you have what Alex was talking about with the Death from Above Wargaming website. They have their resources available for free download on their site, as well as a lot of videos of how to play their game system. Alex, do you want to add anything on the Death from Above, since I know you're probably the most familiar with it as far as how to get their resources?
I think you pretty much covered it, David. But yeah, just again, the warning, just keep in mind the videos, they use a lot of house rules that are not quite out of the book, and most scenarios work fine without the house rules, with maybe a little tweaking. And they also have some Destiny rules as well, but that's for their Patreon members only. But Alpha Strike and Classic, free for all.
You bring up a good point. There are two RPG books as well. You have the BattleTech Destiny and A Time of War. So both of those are more RPG specific books. And yeah, I got nothing on those. Anybody know anything about Destiny or Time of War?
Yeah, I've played it once before. Destiny on a map sheets versus the more abstract combat system, and it worked out okay. it's interesting. I know a few other groups around here are playing it. That's probably a topic for another day. That's a whole nother can of worms, definitely to get into.
If I remember correctly, they should be. I think they recently announced that they're going to be re-releasing A Time of War with soon.
It's actually out now. The PDF is, at least. So
Oh, okay.
I saw a post today on Facebook, I believe it was BattleTech International, that the Time of War rewrite PDF has been released. There is not a date yet for the Time of War physical copy.
And now we'll turn it over to Dave for the old bat reps from around the sphere. Here you go, Dave.
Welcome to the Battle Report. We begin tonight's broadcast with the conclusion of the Acer Guard campaign. The Guard disengaged from the last ambush and was able to break contact with the unmasked forces of the Draconis Combine. Commander Rick consolidated his company on the edge of the capital of Marianas 5. Ahead of him, the Royal Family, under guard by MLF and Combine forces, and his salvation, a Union dropship. As the Guard moved into the city, the full company met light resistance and dispatched the MLF Lance with relatively low return damage. This was a bittersweet victory because the Acer Guard was able to take revenge on the commander of the opening engagement, Captain Winston, but were reminded of the losses they had taken along the way. Having destroyed the Lance guarding the city outskirts, local partisans began to strike out at Combine soldiers lying in wait within the confines of the city streets. The enemy Charlie Lance attempted to defend the palace grounds with a 215-ton force consisting of a rifleman, Wolverine, Centurion, and Hunchback. The Acer Guard, feeling the fires of revenge in their veins, broke the lance and pushed deeper into the city. A lone urban mech stood guard at the palace gates. While it put up the best defense it could, the pilot eventually was seen crawling away from his shattered machine to disappear into the shadows of the city. The forces of the Acer Guard, having recovered the royal family, were joined by the royal prince in his freshly started Warhammer. The combined forces were moving to the dropship when another lance of MLF heavy mechs, set on an intercept course, attempted to stop the mercenaries from achieving freedom. This lance, however, was not the rank and file of the MLF forces. This lance was conned by the commander of the MLF, Colonel Guevara, in his Thunderbolt. The colonel's lance closed fast, and the Acer mechs took defensive positions using the buildings as cover. Laser and PPC fire lit the space between the buildings as LRM fire from a Griffin and longbow rained down on the mercenaries. However, Rick and his mercenaries were able to gain momentum through the concentrated fire that all but melted the light escorts of Colonel Guevara's forces. A skillfully aimed shot dispatched the Thunderbolt and the Colonel into the fondness of memory. Having lost their commanding officer, the MLF forces broke and began retreating from the smoking, damage-riddled mechs of the Acer Guard, several of which moved with the jerky signs of severe actuator damage, and more than a few with the blackened remains of weapon mounts and limbs visibly missing from the mechs. The Guard boarded the dropship and burned for Atmo as soon as they were loaded, heading on the long trip to the jump point and their silent, waiting jump ship. Will the damage to the Acer Guard be too catastrophic for them to recover? See what is in store next month. Moving on to some lighthearted news from the training grounds of New Avalon, where the instructors are hard at work producing new mech warriors and commanders. Using captured clan mechs, the cadre of the mech warrior trainees taught the young brash warriors what they would be facing outside of the school. Instructors took to the field and captured Novacat and Snow Raven mechs, while the students were regulated to Capellan and decommissioned mercenary units. After the training was complete, the cadre set to dressing down the young warriors and put them to work polishing the cracks between the armor plates of the commander's mech. One student told reporters it wasn't a fair fight, right before a wrench was hurled through the air, impacting the student in the neck, followed by a loud, "What was that?" from across the hangar. When the reporter turned back, the student had left the area. Finally, we end our news with a cautionary tale of a doomed, unnamed mercenary force. The mercs descended on a night raid into a city bathed in ultraviolet light. The buildings glowed with an eerie purple blue. The mercs cautiously approached the edge of the city, knowing only that a pirate force had occupied the concrete jungle in front of them, and that the force was roughly equal in strength to their own. Then it all went wrong. The mercs' first mistake was not asking for more intel. Then they would have known that they were not the hunters. They were the hunted. The pirate force was none other than Herbopocalypse, commanded by the nefarious and sadistic Mike Gazebo. Gazebo is known to have a love of the filthy underworld and a predilection for urban mechs. In front of the mercs, lying in wait, was an entire company of trash cans armed for war. The battle turned from bad to worst as the first of the 8 mercenary mechs fell to the combined fire of an Irby artillery lance. The Wolverine did not even have time to eject. It simply ceased to exist. The last to fall in the cyclone of destructive waste bins was an archer and what could only be identified after the battle as a Wolverine. The victory was absolute. The carnage, undeniable. The defeat, total. Stay tuned, Mech Warriors, for more news next month on the Battle Report here at the Valhalla Club. Tonight's Battle Reports were brought to you by Alex and Rick, Max Kitbash, and Mike Gazebo. Stay safe out there, Mech Warriors.
And now we're going to go over to BourBen for the brew of the month. Take it away, Ben.
Hey all, this is Ben here, your BattleTech Master of Spirits. Get your mixers, liquors, shakers, stirrers, and strainers ready as we cover this month's BattleTech Drink of the Month. The drink of the month as the newly designated Master of Spirits for the BattleTech Universe, I guess. So this month I chose the to go down the PPC route, and let me tell you, PPC is not something that you want to have on a regular basis. This month is the Davian PPC Capellan March. Okay, so there's a Davian PPC, I think I talked about in the first episode, that is 4 parts grain alcohol and 2 parts of bourbon, which, okay, I'll take that. The Capellan March version is 4 parts grain alcohol and 2 parts tequila. Okay. I got to be honest, it's terrible. It's not that good. I'm not a tequila guy anyway, but the grain alcohol I'm using is some Appalachian White Lightning that I brought with me, and I've determined that I'm just going to do them as shots, and that's as far as I'm going to go, because anything more than that, you're putting a hurt on yourself.
Ride the lightning.
Now, Alex, did you try that?
I have tried a full PPC, and it is the absolute most disgusting thing that I've ever paid for. And
Yeah.
I think the bartender at Top Golf thought I was crazy.
More than likely.
Yeah, I tried to join Ben in solidarity here and have a PPC, Capellan PPC as well. I'll be honest, my grain alcohol days are probably well beyond me now. So call me a wuss if you want, but I subbed out vodka instead and didn't really improve it too much. I had to wuss out even more and add some club soda and some agave nectar to give it a little something else. Almost making it like a skinny margarita kind of, I guess, sort of, maybe. But yeah, I got to admit, this one is not a keeper with the rules as written for it.
Negative. I mean, it's one of those things where if you put it in a whiskey glass and do like a 4 parts kind of thing and a 2 part, you're in for you're in for a rough ride, So I'm any of those PPCs, I'm sticking with just a shot, and that's as far as I'm going because they are rough.
Well, the PPCs we made in my house weren't too bad.
Yeah, but yours were the light PPCs.
They were even farther than that. It was just vodka, blue curacao, and Sprite.
So you're saying the PPCs are the drink we should give the other podcasters at LVO before we face them? Is that
that's
speaking
true?
of which, this is a great plug for the challenge that we issued them. We at the Valhalla podcast have challenged, and the challenge has been accepted by WolfNet for Drunk Tech. So we will be designing lists for them. They will be designing lists for us. And if you lose a mech or a unit, you have to drink a drink. And yeah, we're probably gonna be hurting pretty bad on day 2 of LVO.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. I played Tommy from WolfNet at Battle Barn this year, and we were fighting out for last. I think I talked about this already, but I'll cover it again because it was pretty epic. We said, hey, we're going to do every objective that you take. You get to take a shot. So by the time we got to the 80-minute mark on the 350 game, I think we'd killed probably at least a half a bottle between the two of us. It was pretty good. It was pretty fantastic. We were feeling great.
As the only non-drinker, I look forward to a show. I'll say that.
Oh, you'll be having to do all the recording.
I know.
Because we won't be capable of doing it. I'll bring my laptop. We'll set up the webcam to watch this shit show, and we will see how it goes.
It will be fantastic.
If they get their YouTube channel up to 1,000 subscribers in time, they can live.
Do it live.
Yeah, they can live stream everything on their YouTube channel. If they hit that benchmark, it would be really awesome.
That's another thing. If anyone listening to us is not yet subscribed to WolfNet's YouTube channel, please go do that so that they can live stream at LVO.
Yeah, because we'll jump on too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we also have to pull in some guys because I think it's just me and Dave against the WolfNet guys, and I believe we're going to co-opt maybe Chandler Reller from Armor Up, and I don't know who else we're going to get. Maybe Brute if he shows up.
Yeah,
I'm game.
Because I know between the WolfNet guys, it's Andrew, Aaron, Matt.
Well, I only challenged Andrew and Aaron. And then I forget we roped Charles into it, and I forget who the other person. Oh yeah, well I guess Matt, you can't because you don't drink.
Yeah,
right.
So we need to find a third because we're not letting Charles get out of this.
Yeah.
Somehow, I think we could find someone to do it there. Somehow.
Yeah,
I'm sure we can.
Pretty sure we can.
We can bring Josh. I bet Josh can drink a tanker.
The hollow leg. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so PPC's no bueno.
No
PPC,
bueno.
No bueno.
On to the what I call the news from the neighborhood, or kind of consistent games or game nights that are going on. So, up here in Fort Collins on Wednesday nights at around 6 p.m. in my own basement, my own little BattleTech basement here, we have games going on. Usually Alpha Strike, but we like this week we played Destiny, the DFA Destiny system. We've had campaigns going on. If you're up here in the area or if you're visiting on a Wednesday night, be sure to stop by. There's always treats and stuff, and I feed people and help them play BattleTech, so it's fun. Also, Friday night fights down at Hobbytown Westminster, starting around 5:30 to 6. There's usually a good number of people. We've averaged we probably average about 8 to 10 people every Friday, but we've had up to like 15 or 16. There's both Alpha Strike and Classic BattleTech going on, so I'll put a plug in right now for Mateo. He just started a Chaos campaign with a couple of guys during they're playing Clan Invasion, like 3052. They just started that this Friday, so that'll be going on. And then I'll be starting up a new Alpha Strike campaign here in 2 weeks, or just under 2 weeks, on every other Friday, and it's still open for anyone to join. I'm GMing it, and it'll be another clan invasion, but it'll be fun. Lots of fun optional rules. Looks like we have a couple other places. Dave, did you put those on as far as?
I did.
Okay,
So I recently took a trip out to Grand Junction, and I found a game store out there called Board Fox Games that has a Wednesday night BattleTech group. So hopefully we will be able to get them linked up with the Colorado BattleTech group. But if anyone who is listening to this is out there in Grand Junction on the Western Slope, they have a BattleTech night. Also, here in the Springs, we have Petrie's Games, and every third Saturday at 2 p.m. is a BattleTech time slot, and that's what I'm tracking for the for Colorado Springs area for regular games.
Cool. And then I just remembered that down in Pueblo on Friday nights, I believe they're playing down there. Alpha Strike is, I think, the only thing they're playing. But yeah, Friday nights. I'm not sure at what time, but Luke down there has started to build up the community down there, playing at game night games. So it's a really nice new store, new area that they're playing in. So really cool place.
And they have a whole lot of stuff in stock.
Yeah, always well stocked.
Yeah, they do.
So go play down there. So that's it kind of as regular games, but as far as upcoming action, I'm going to flip it back over to Dave to talk about this upcoming event we've got next month. Go for it, Dave.
So in about 4 weeks' time, we have the Liberation of Black Earth event, which we've talked on and off about. That is on November 19th, starting at 10 a.m. at Inconceivable Games in Castle Rock. That is going to be a Hexless Classic BattleTech event. So it's using the Fan Pro WizKids miniatures rules for BattleTech. Mike and I will actually be doing a mid-month release where we're going to go over the rules, go over a little bit more in depth of the game day testing we have done, and be able to talk about really what's going to be happening at the event, what you'll need to bring as players, and give you a really good deep dive overview of what's going to be happening. Then in December, down in Colorado Springs, we will be having a WolfNet AS350 tournament at Gamers Haven. I believe the start time should also be at 10 o'clock. And then for February, Genghis Khan, we are currently still waiting on confirmation of 2 different events that are going to be happening there. We do have indications that it's going to happen, but it is the weekend of February 26th. So over the next month or two, we will hopefully be able to confirm all of that and give you the dates. And then, of course, we can't go without saying the January Las Vegas Open from January 26th to 29th. Most of us on the podcast are going to be going to the Las Vegas Open. And anybody who's out there that wants to join us, please feel free. I think there's still a very small amount of tickets that are left for the Alpha Strike tournament. And then there's also the BattleTech Championship Circuit, which is a classic event that will be happening that weekend.
Yeah, and that's kind of the summary of the upcoming events. So a lot of stuff happening nearby, and
We got one more.
we got one more coming up. What has it been?
So we got the raid on Butte Hold
Yes.
coming up in Westminster on November 13th is what it's looking like right now. That's going to be a classic event at the Hobbytown Westminster.
Yep, and I think it's Greg that's running that. He's a great guy, so should be fun as well if you can make it. So I think that pretty much wraps us up. So we'll go out to shout outs here. So Alex is the guest. You get to start us off with whoever you'd like to shout out.
All right, my first shout out is just to all of you guys for allowing me to join you on this podcast. Thank you for this opportunity. It's been a pleasure. Next 2 shout outs go to those who have been doing my little campaigns with GM with 1 player each. First is to now star Captain Jake, recently now of Clan Diamond Shark. We're doing a kind of a clan lifecycle campaign. if you kind of imagine like the Jade Falcon trilogy, or sorry, the Jade Phoenix trilogy, combined with like the Blood of Krinsky trilogy, we're kind of working through a lot of that lore, and also to Rick of the Acer Guards for the mini 3-session campaign that we ran. And if you kind of imagine the Grey Death trilogy book, Mercenary Star, it's kind of one of those campaigns. And last shout out is to my wife Vivian. So I was not a war gamer before we met and got married. So just thanks to her for putting up with all this stuff that's come along with getting into BattleTech and a couple other war games so hard in the last few years, and for pretending to be interested in it from time to time as well. She'll be joining me at LVO as well. We'll be there a few days early, but might see you around some on Saturday in the convention. Probably won't be there much when we're doing the tournament on Friday.
Does she have a ticket?
She has a ticket, yeah, for Saturday, but not for Friday.
No, I mean for the AS350 tournament.
No, she's not gonna play. I did convince her to play a lot with me during the pandemic, whenever it was a lot harder to go to a shop and play a game. But yeah, she sticks more to MechWarrior Online, I think. She prefers it that way. Now they can play with y'all again.
Props to her all either way. Let's see, Mike.
All right, so for my shout out this month, I just want to thank the MUL team, the Mass Unitless team. They received some heat for the site going down for a few days. It's back up. It's a resource I think we all severely rely on. But it's back up and running. And I just appreciate all the work they put into that website, and it's really easy to spend hours on end on the MUL. But no, shout outs to the team that runs the MUL.
And well played for the Dark Age release.
That was perfect.
Agreed, Mike. Agreed. Dave, go for it.
My shout out this week is to Jack, Josh, and Dusty for coming out to Gamers Haven and helping me do the first round of testing for the November event. It was very, very helpful. So just a big thank you to all three of them, and it's going to help make the event even better. So that's from me.
Awesome. BourBen.
I haven't really been around people for the last month or so, other than work people. So I guess I'll shout out a company here. I bought 100 bases because I had a lot of infantry to base for some reason. And I bought 100 bases from Litco Games. They have a bunch of like plastic clear bases you can get, and they're perfect size for the 350 measurements and stuff like that. So Litco Games, and they got them to me in about 4 days. So it's fantastic. So
cool.
That's my shout out.
Cool, and I'll finish the shout outs. Just shouting out to my my regular Fort Collins crew that plays up here on Wednesday nights. Ian, Lauren, and Josh M. Especially Josh M. He's kind of our local printer, so he's printed out quite a bit of stuff for us. But those three guys and myself, we've did a lot of BattleTech over the last little while, and it's been great. So just appreciate those guys, and even when I'm a bit of a Debbie Downer because all my mechs get shot off in like 2 turns, they're still good. So it's great to have people to play with, and just thanks for everyone listening, and we'll send you to our little outro. See you later, guys.
Thanks for joining us today in the Valhalla Club. Special thanks to our sponsor, Ares Games and Miniatures. Ares is the premier online retailer for all your BattleTech needs. You can contact us at thevalhallaclub@outlook.com. If you are in Colorado, please join your local community group on Facebook and Discord. If you are able to help support your local Colorado BattleTech community, subscribe on Patreon to Colorado BattleTech. This Patreon account is used to supply prize support for local events and assist in venue costs. Links for the Valhalla Club Discord, the Colorado BattleTech Patreon, and Facebook group are in the show notes. Until next time, mech fans.